Happy Sunday, everybody. This is Auntie, and I am back as promised. I watched a two-part series, excellently done by According to Amber. But I'm trying to tell you, that mofo got me side-eyeing Michael like I never thought I would before. I don't know if y'all had an opportunity to watch it, but I'm going to give y'all my opinion about Michael that has come out in this interview. For me, these are my opinions, my views. Let's get into it. A sweet old auntie. Thank you, subscribers, to my nieces and nephews, and all the y'all who have been here through the long haul. Shall we get into it? Oh, yes, we shall. It's time for Auntie Advice. Sweet old. It's time for Auntie Advice. Oh, yeah. It's time for Auntie Advice. Y'all, happy Sunday. Thanks for coming back, and thank you for having your notification bells on so that when I go live, you go live right along with me. According to Amber, y'all know always be getting the scoop. I mean, I love me some According to Amber. She recently did a two-part interview with Michael from, hold on, let me bring him up to the front. Let me bring them both up to the front. She recently did an interview with Michael on her channel. If you are not subscribed, and I doubt it if you're not, because if you're following me, you're probably following Amber. But Amber did an interview, and I thought she did a fantastic job asking him all of the questions that we wanted answers to and more. We found out in this interview that Michael has two children. That was not discussed on the show. He said that he has a boy and a girl, and he has no relationship with the young lady because this baby came out of a one night stand. We found out some other things about Michael as well, right? And as I said, she did a very good job with it. But according to him, the closer that I looked at the relationship that he had with Kaylee, the more I began questioning whether he was actually in love with her, had fallen in love with this woman standing in front of him, or or was a relationship between the two of them was just a relationship that they had created through phone calls, letters, and promises on her behalf. And for me, that's not something he directly says, but it's a question that was in my mind. I couldn't shake it as I listened to all of the two interviews. Y'all, let me explain why. So throughout the hours of the conversation, he repeatedly tells us what Katie did. She wrote him. She answered every call. She visited every. She sent commissary money. She promised to help him rebuild his credit. She went to visit the mofo. She talked about paying off his driver's license. She wanted to help him get on his feet after prison. Those are the stories he tells over and over again. But something else kept happening that I don't know whether or not anybody else picked up, and I certainly did. He almost never stopped to tell us why he loved her. Never. Never. And it bothered me. It absolutely bothered me. Now, I'm going to come back right in the end because I wrote down some notes that I had to write down. But I'm telling you right now, that interview had me side eyeing and you know what about him. Now, granted, Kaylee is not my favorite person, but one thing about it, Auntie gonna tell you how she feels, and I'm not going to cut to. I'm not going to side with anybody. Based on the information that I heard him saying, it left me side eye, Michael. It really, really did. It did, and I couldn't help but side eye him. Hey, Tamika's den. Happy Sunday, boo. Okay. Having said that, let me go through some of the interview. Um, During this interview, I want y'all to know that I don't believe everything that one person says. I believe that there is um his side, her side, and then the truth is somewhere in the weeds. Um, I have to remind myself that when we sit and watch 42 minutes of this show every Friday, it is only a small fraction of what producers decide to include. The interview that Amber did um, is a portion of it as well. Um, According to former cast members speaking, it's the story that he believes, and this is his opinion based on his lived experience. I do understand that. None of what he said was independently verified. And as I always tell you, there's always multiple sides to every relationship. And so my goal here in I'm talking about his interview with Amber isn't to convince you that who's telling the truth. My goal is to walk you through everything I thought he said in the order he says it actually happened, and along the way I'm gonna point out a few things that really stood out to me. Okay. So, according to him, the story began long before federal prison, right? And long before Love After Lockup. During the earlier period of incarceration, Kaylee entered into Michael's life. So, like a whole lot of other prison relationships, it started off with communication. She wrote letters, she answered the phone, she came to visit. According to him, those visits became a regular part of his life. And every weekend, according to him, she was there. She sent money for commissary, encouraged him, talked about the future, and gave him something many incarcerated people basically crave. And that's, consistency in their life and looking to have a better life, one way or the freaking other. And when you're sitting behind those prison walls, I can imagine that every day looks almost exactly like the day it did before. And so the people on the outside move in, right? And they move on with their lives and stuff like that, while yours seem to, stand still. And so, according to him, Kaylee didn't make him feel forgotten. She made him feel like she was someone who was waiting in the wings for him to get out. As he tells it, she wasn't simply saying she cared, she was trying to demonstrate it or lying like she was going to demonstrate it, right? So week after week she continued showing up for him. And according to him, everything stopped. He had no explanation, no warning, no phone calls, no letters, no visits, no nothing. He says she simply disappeared from his life for about 6 months before he was scheduled to be released. Imagine, right, that he had been talking to her almost every weekend, believing that, you counting down until them days, right? And so, according to him, that's exactly what happened. He said eventually, he says he learned through other people that she had allegedly been involved with another man and had became pregnant by the man. So, whether that's exactly what happened is ultimately something only Kaylee can address. But according to him, that explanation answered the question he had been asking himself for months: why did she just vanish? Okay. So, I want you all to remember something, because I don't don't think is accidental. Throughout his interviews with Emma, he doesn't describe the first heartbreak by saying she stopped loving him. He describes it as saying she stopped showing up. And that was and is an important distinction that I want us all to make, because as I listen, I begin noticing a pattern with him. Almost every time he would talk about the relationship, he measured it through the actions instead of emotions. What she did for him, what she could do for him, what she promised to do for him, right? And she dropped the ball. Of course, we all have seen that on the show where, allegedly she's gotten him in, like, what, 40,000 plus in debt. So another thing that I noticed is that, and I'm gonna keep repeating it as much as I feel like I want to, love wasn't his first expressed thoughts. It wasn't. Love is answering that phone when they call from jail. Love is writing the letters. Love is keeping the promise, which of course we know she didn't. And in my opinion, when I observed that, it became very important to me because it explains almost every decision he said that he made later on. Eventually, Michael said he found himself serving another sentence. And this time he was in Fed pen. By then, years had passed since Kaylee disappeared. So, according to him, she reached out again, and that wasn't a chance encounter, right? She contacted him. She wanted to reconnect. And surprisingly, he says his initial reaction wasn't excitement, it was resistance. So, according to him, he already accepted that chapter of his life as being over. And so he basically says that he told her he didn't need anything from her. But that was far from the freaking truth. That was far from the truth. In fact, he made it a point repeatedly throughout the interview because he knows many viewers believe he attached himself to her because of money. He kept saying he need no money. He went in there with money. He said before going to prison, he had managed to save some money. He explains that when the federal stimulus checks were issued during the pandemic, his mother invested that money rather than spending it. He says he had already begun planning what life would look like for him after prison, including employment, transportation, and rebuilding his finances. And according to him, he wasn't sitting in prison waiting for somebody to rescue him, but Kaylee. So yeah, I'm side-eyeing him. He wanted all of us to understand I need her money. But that's all we've been hearing on the show. Everything in their relationship has been based on money. Can we all agree to that? Can we agree that everything that we have been seeing with Michael and Kaylee has been about money? But yet, he wanted to make sure that he explained he didn't need no money. He had money. And it's stimulus money. So when he mentioned on this week's episode of Life After Lockup, Love After Lockup, why couldn't he pay that $5,000, $6,000 downtown to the motor vehicles? I'm just asking the question for a friend. Sometimes because people have nasty personalities, don't mean they wrong for having it. This interview really opened up who Michael is, in my humble opinion. And I know everybody ain't gonna agree. And I don't need you to. I just need you to hear me all the way out. He wanted all of us to understand in that interview that he need money. And that was from the beginning. But still, Kaylee didn't give up on him. She continued to write him. She continued calling him. And she continued sending him commissary money. According to him, she wasn't pressured into doing those things. He says they were offered voluntarily. Over roughly a year, he estimates she regularly sent him around $360 each month for commissary, books, and necessities. Eventually, they weren't just talking occasionally, they were talking every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Slowly, according to him, the trust that he had broken earlier years earlier began rebuilding itself. So this is another place where I want to pause, because I found myself waiting for something that increasingly enough almost never came from him. I kept waiting for him to tell us why he fell in love with her. I kept expecting to hear him say that she was funny, kind, beautiful, compassionate, or that she made him laugh until his size was hurting his stomach. He was balled up and not laughing. But instead, he talks about consistency. He talked about reliability. He talks about commitment. He talks about the fact that she answered every month phone call and wrote every letter. And that's not necessarily unusual, because everyone experiences love differently. But I don't think it's but I do think it's revealing. Throughout hours of this interview, he consistently explained what she did for him rather than what it was about her personality that captured his heart from the beginning. That doesn't prove he didn't love her. It just simply tells me something about how he defines trust. Because according to him, the first year of reconnecting was relatively smooth. He says that she appeared, to be financially stable. She worked multiple jobs. She had income coming in from different sources. And he said, including OnlyFans. He said she wasn't complaining about money and wasn't constantly talking about being overwhelmed financially. When we go back to the OnlyFans, he said that she had to quit the OnlyFans because there was something in her contract that she would be fired over. He said, so the footage, according to him, Love After Lockup, was edited to remove that, to ensure that she didn't lose her job. Now, I'm not watching the comments, so I'm hoping y'all are being respectful. Okay? From his perspective, she appeared to have her life together. Then little by little, the conversation began changing, right? She started telling him she was struggling financially, bills were becoming harder to pay, and her money was getting tight. Most people might have responded by simply saying, I'm sorry you're going through that. According to him, that's not how his mind works. He wanted to solve the problem, but did he send her any money? Did the mother consider? Let me walk. See, my vocabulary getting off, and I don't want my vocabulary to get off. Now, mind you, this mofo said he had money in the bank. A relationship is two ways. Did he send her any money? Did he send her anything? No. He asked to see her bills. He asked for her monthly expenses. He wanted to build a budget. He wanted to figure out where her money was going. And according to him, once he began reviewing her finances, he became concerned. He says that his calculations show she had already been operating $700 in the negative every month before accounting for gas, commissary, and unexpected expenses from him. He also says he noticed that he believed was unnecessary spending, including regular Starbucks purchases deducted directly from her paycheck as a benefit of working at the hospital. So to him, there weren't just coffee purchases, they represented a larger problem. They represented someone living beyond their means while promising a future they might not actually afford to be able to afford, right? But did he ever tell her to stop sending the money? Well, he had money in the bank. He had money in the bank. When he saw that she was $700 over and she was sending him 300 and some dollars, why can't he say, you know what? Let's reduce that down to 400 or 450. Stop sending me the money. I got money. And so you think your auntie ain't sitting up here side on him? Some things is rather left unsaid because he been walking around here pompous and you know the cats meow because you know women sometimes get caught up in how somebody look on the outside, but they don't look at the heart of the person and the motive. He sat up here and said that he looked at her finances, so he know what she could and she couldn't do. And in my opinion, to continue to have her send you money that you said you didn't need. So when I started sitting there listening, continuing to listen to it, this is when I started learning something really important about him. He repeatedly says that prison taught him to study people. He said that it taught him to pay attention to details. And throughout his interview with my lovely, according to Amber, he says over and over again he verifies information instead of simply believing it. What a coincidence. I do the same thing. What a coincidence. I listen to the information too before I believe anything. Okay, so I see that comment. So hold on a second. Let me get this comment. Cause y'all ain't gonna have you two flagging me. I don't want to turn the comments off, y'all. I've never done that on my channel. But I'm asking you not to use certain words in my comments. I agree. Tamika, I may mess around and make you a mod. Excuse me, y'all. I don't usually have to do this. Thank you, Tamika. So, as I said throughout the interview, he kept saying over and over again that he verifies information instead of simply believing it. He verified that this woman is over her budget. He verified that by looking at her financial transactions. He talked about receipts. He talks about documentation. He talked about checking facts for himself. And the more I listened, the more I realized that trust for him isn't built through words, it's built through verification. Every promise has to match the evidence for him. Every statement has to match the reality. That mindset may have helped him survive prison, but I also found myself wondering whether that same mindset would eventually become difficult to carry into a marriage where complete certainty is almost impossible between the two of them. And then, according to him, one of the biggest misconceptions created by the TV show is that he spent his incarceration expecting Kaylee to finance his life. Didn't this mofo? He pushed back against it, right? He pushed back against that narrative. But I think he forgot what he said. In fact, in one of the few points he kept saying over and over again throughout the interviews, he says he wasn't sitting in prison writing shopping lists for her to fulfill. He wasn't expecting her to solve all his problems. But since he's been out and she ain't solved his problem, it's the biggest issues between the two of them. According to him, the plans he made while incarcerated was designed for him to take care of himself. And according to him, the plans he made while incarcerated and everything she promised disappeared overnight. He would still have a path forward if things didn't happen right. Whether viewers believe that or not is ultimately your decision, but it explains why he keeps emphasizing that he had this savings, investments, employment lined up, and backup plans before he ever walked out the prison. And it didn't appear that any of it included Kaylee. But all of Kaylee's plans included him. Y'all get where I'm going? Y'all get where I'm side eyeing? Then the conversation turned personal because rather than focusing only on the finances, he began talking about what he believed motivated Kaylee's behavior. So now I want to be careful here because this is entirely his opinion. He wasn't speaking as a mental health professional. He wasn't speaking as somebody who, spent years in a relationship trying to understand why things happened the way that they did. But according to him, Kaylee struggled with deep insecurities that existed long before he had even started dating her and married her. He believed that much of her behavior stemmed from unresolved childhood trauma and a fear of abandonment. And I think that most of us can agree that that is what we are possibly looking at, right? And in his opinion, she needed people to depend on her because her dependence or that dependence on her gave her a sense of purpose and security. And so he said that, she often made promises she genuinely intended to keep. But once reality set in, those promises became, hard for Kaylee to fulfill. And he didn't describe her as someone who woke up every morning planning to deceive people. Instead, he tried to describe her as somebody who wanted to be viewed, right, as a person who could fix everyone's problems, even when she wasn't in a position to do that. As I listened to him explain that, I found myself thinking something very different from what I expected was going on. I expected him to spend hours in some ways attacking her character. Instead, much of what he did was to attempt to explain it. So I will give him kudos and credit for that. Whether he was right or wrong, right, is another matter altogether. But I noticed how often he tried to understand her instead of simply insulting her. He did talk about, her childhood. He talked about her insecurities. He also talked about her need to feel valuable. He almost sounds as if he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't completely make sense to him. So I will give him credit for that. But then he said something that stayed with me. According to him, right, he often felt like she was dangling a carrot in front of him. And that's in quotes, dangling a carrot. Every time one problem appeared, another problem is followed. So if money was tight, a better job was was supposed to be right around the corner for her. If the transportation became an issue, there was always another solution. If one financial obligation couldn't be met by Kaylee, it would be handled tomorrow. According to him, he always felt stability wasn't within the reach, but somehow they never actually arrived there. And again, that's his description of the relationship, not Auntie's. But it helps to explain, right, for me, the word promise appears to often be, talked about during an interview. So here's where I want to ask y'all a question. Is it possible for two people to be in a relationship genuinely caring about each other and still slowly become trapped inside roles that neither of them really realized they were playing? Because the last I saw a simple story where he talked, I just didn't see a simple. This relationship was complicated from day A. Day A. I attempted through the interview, through what he was saying to, according to Amber, I tried to see this as two people trying to meet very different emotional, financial needs. So according to him, she needed to feel indispensable, needed, wanted. But according to him, she needed to be the one that was helping, rescuing, supporting, and providing. But if you listen carefully to him, you'll notice he also needed something. He needed honesty from her that he could tangibly verify. He needed every promise that Kaylee made to line up with his reality. And when you look at it on the on side of it, right, it doesn't seem like a bad quality. But sometimes two people can spend time, so much time trying to satisfy their own emotional need that they stop seeing the other person for who they really are. This is a mom with 4 kids, unbalanced like a mother, didn't have a mother taking care of her. She was unstable from the giddy up and not a match with him because he had ambitions and dreams and hopes and investments. And as he continued to say, he didn't need her. Then he started telling on her business. And guess what he was telling her business about? Her money. With him, there is a consistency, and it's about money and finances. Because according to him, She was always carrying substantial debt, including student loans, vehicle payments, credit card balances, and unpaid utility bills. He alleges that when the financial pressure increased, responsibility often shifted to someone else. He claims that former partners had helped her in the past. And eventually he found himself stepping into that same role. One example, right, particularly frustrated him involved an electricity bill. According to him, because of outstanding balances, the account had to be placed in his daggone name. He says that the bill later went unpaid, damaging his credit until he eventually paid off the remaining balance his daggone self. And guess what? Ironically, he says that painful experience became one of the reasons he dedicated himself to rebuilding his credit score, eventually raising it from 400 to nearly 700. But when we saw it on the show and he was on the car with his mother, when the mother asked him to check his credit card, it was back downtown in the 400s. And so that story tells me something else about Michael, right? Throughout the interview with Amber, whenever something goes financially wrong, he doesn't simply complain about it, right? He said that he, immediately begins talking about fixing it. He talks about improving his credit. He talks about budgeting. He talked about planning. He talked about creating systems, to prevent the same mistakes from happening again. And whether you agree with all of his decisions or not, there is a reoccurring theme with him. He talks about planning, but planning never worked out for him in this relationship. Because then he started talking about what happened when he got up out of jail. And after years of talking about the future, the life together didn't last. Look like it was a good 2 weeks of filming. He walked out expecting some things from Kaylee that Kaylee just could not deliver. He said the financial stuff that they was going through, that they argued over the phone, were no longer hypothetical. When he got home, bills had to be paid, transportation had to be secured. And he was saying that, the daily responsibilities that they were going through in this particular relationship, right, got worse and worse. And according to him, all these unmet promises became reality for him. He talked about the BMW as well, his car being sold. And I side eyed that conversation. I just like, he just gave me the side eye, the eternal side eye, the side eye that ain't never going away, the side eye that's going to make me look at this show completely different when I see the two of them come up on the screen. Because according to him, while he was visiting his mother, right? Excuse me, y'all. After his release, one of Kaylee's old children casually mentioned something that immediately caught his attention. The child allegedly indicated that Kaylee's ex-husband had been living with him. At first, he said he dismissed it, right? He was like, oh, no. Nah. He was like, children misunderstand things. He said, but then they repeated the conversation. And he said he couldn't believe it. He could not believe what he heard. But according to him, the more questions he became, Lord Jesus, the more he was convinced after asking all these questions that she had been living with her ex-husband for nearly 2 years, even while he was in prison. And they were married. He said this made him rethink everything. So he says suddenly all this stuff clicked because it appeared that the guy was carrying his stuff. And when the guy stopped carrying his stuff, Kaylee bills started getting out of control. So according to him, she was sharing the bills with the ex-husband, with the ex-man. And when the arrangement ended between them and Michael was set to come home, that's when everything started crumbling like a house of cards. And again, y'all, those are his allegations. This is his side of the story. And again, they have not been independently verified, but from his perspective, this wasn't just another disagreement over some daggone money. This was the moment he began questioning whether the life he believed they were building together had ever truly existed between them. Because according to him, if discovering right the alleged living arrangement with her ex-husband shook his confidence, what happened to him next, right? He said it destroyed it. He said that after asking more questions and looking more closely at the relationship, he eventually obtained text messages and screenshots that, in his opinion, confirmed what he was thinking. And so, according to him, those messages suggested she had been unfaithful while he was incarcerated. Not only with that ex-husband, right, he believed she had been living with, but with another former person that she had been dating as well. And he said those messages have not been independently verified, right? But from his perspective, those screenshots answer questions he had been asking himself ever since he walked out of prison about daggone Kaylee. Kaylee said, I needs a man that got a wallet in the back of his pocket and he don't mind unfolding it and snatching out some dollar bills. One thing that I really found out of control, right? Because I'm telling you, this interview was out of control. That even while discussing all this, he believes that the biggest betrayal in their relationship, and he still doesn't, he said he don't spend much time talking about it. He just been trying to connect the dots. He said he felt like he has been doing an investigation of his own marriage and asking himself as he looks back over stuff, what did I miss? And he said every new piece of information becomes another puzzle piece and stuff that he should have been I spying from the beginning. And then the conversation, right, he started telling Amber, right, that one of his biggest public disagreements surrounding their relationship. He said by the point many viewers had accepted the narrative that Kaylee had sacrificed thousands of dollars supporting him right during his incarceration, when he asked specifically about reports that she had sent thousands of dollars to Western Union, his response was always, I love to see the receipts. According to him, those payments simply never happened. He also talked about an email that many viewers interpreted as evidence that he expected Katie to buy him expensive gifts after their release. So, according to him, right, that interpretation is not true. He explains that prison gives people an enormous amount of time to think. And he says he kept running, right, documents for years containing that what he learned about books and all of that kind of stuff, right? He said that, he wanted to read. He was reading educational seminars that he hoped to attend, right? Amber asked him how they had been on the show. He said that she had contacted the show, and that during that time period, the producers had got back in contact with her. She backpedaled and pussy popped off of it, and so when she reapplied again, he said she went ghost for a while from him. And so he said when she went back to go and reapply to be on the show, she went on ignore. He said, so rather than her completely give up, she started doing TikTok videos about it. And shortly thereafter, it got their attention and they went on with the show. Um, I made some notes. Let me see what else I think is relevant. So let me go. So here go my notes about the BMW. So according to him, y'all, after leaving prison and beginning to rebuild his life, he purchased a used BMW with his own money. And at one point, a sensor malfunctioned in the BMW, right? Initially, he had considered selling the vehicle because he assumed the repairs would be expensive on the car. Then he learned the repair would only cost about $50. According to him, once he realized that, he decided to keep the BMW. But before he could move forward with that plan, according to him, Katie traded the vehicle without his permission. That's dumb. And so, like I said, she got her stuff too. But I need him to own his too. He said she promised to repay him $4,000, representing the trade-in value. He believed the money would be coming, and he waited. And according to him, she never give it to him. Of course not. This woman is in desperate need of money. She is just, acting in a way. If what he is saying, she just shisty and ghetto. He said instead, his mother stepped in and helped him purchase another vehicle so he could continue working. So he told Amber that eventually he repaid his mother himself because he refused to leave her carrying that financial burden. And as for the $4,000, he said Kaylee promised to give him back. He never got it, and he ain't getting it. Every time, y'all, he tells a story involving money, he almost always ends by explaining how he eventually took responsibility for himself. I did notice that when talking about the things that happened, he also talked about rebuilding his credit, paying off the electric bill, repaying his mother, arranging employment. Well, the mother arranged the employment. The mother did that. Now, look, before anybody misunderstands me, I am not saying that Michael didn't love Kaylee. I'm saying I listened to the two separate interviews and I was waiting for him to describe the woman who had captured his heart. And for me, listening to the interviews, I never hear him say it. He never said she was the funniest woman he had ever met. He never said she made him feel peaceful. He never said she was his best friend. He never said he married her because he couldn't imagine spending his life without her. Instead, he consistently explained to Amber why he trusted her. And y'all know trust and love are two different things. So as I kept listening, I realized that every reason he gave for marrying her sounded practical and transactional. He wanted a woman who was dependable and was going to make it rain, like in a strip club. He believed that she was that because she answered every phone call. Remember, he kept talking about that. She never missed a visit. She sent the money when she didn't have to. She supported him while he was incarcerated. She appeared to be committed to building a future. And she wanted to help rebuild his credit. She wanted to help him get back on his feet. And she talked about buying a house, building businesses, and creating a life together. So, all those wonderful reasons to believe someone is committed. But they're still different from hearing him say, I married her because I deeply fell in love with who she was. And I think that in everything I've talked about is where the story became more complicated for your auntie and which made your auntie give him the side eye. It's more complicated to me being a single mom, right? I couldn't even afford to take care of somebody in jail. I couldn't afford to even do the things or make the promises that Kaylee did. He said that, she has a desire for people to need her and all of that kind of stuff. And maybe that's what motivated a lot of stuff. Because according to his own account, he wasn't looking for someone to rescue him financially. He repeatedly said he had money saved, right? But he wanted viewers to know that he had a plan, right, to be independent of Kaylee. And at the same time, he absolutely accepted what she offered. And it's just a side eye. There was one thing that he said before I closed, because I'm supposed to be somewhere at 4 o'clock and I ain't gonna make it and they gonna be mad. Throughout the interview, he repeatedly says things like, I'm going to lead. I'm not going to show her. I'm going to teach her. I'm going to help her budget. I'm going to fix the finances. I'm going to show her how this works. Did y'all catch all of that? It wasn't words coming from a man that makes a woman feel butterflies in romance. Those are the words that are someone describing a purpose. So, according to him, he genuinely believed he could help organize what he saw as chaos. And I think that he is a fixer. He believed that he could create stability in this woman's life. He believed he could lead the household. And the more I listened, the more I wonder whether part of what attracted to him wasn't Kaylee, but the opportunity to fix someone. I think that both of them are broken people coming from broken worlds, but mm-mm, they were not a match. They both were on two different playing fields, and Kaylee simply did not have it. She was living a double life while she was in jail, living with another man, having someone support her finances and stuff. But for me, when I would have looked at her stuff and saw that she was spending $1,200 in Starbucks, she would not have been a fit for me. But I want to close and say this: Kaylee got her story too. She got her own experiences with Michael and her own perspective as well. What I can tell you, I observed after listening to the interviews, I didn't come away believing this interview was primarily about money at first. I didn't come away believing it was about prison either, right? I basically came away thinking that this was about trust basically between the two of them. And I'm telling you right now, there was none. There absolutely was no trust in this relationship. Michael now is in another relationship with another woman, and I hope that he really has gotten himself together and that he is the man that he wants us to believe that he is. He is the man with the plan and the promised land. And that this won't be a reoccurrence of some other stuff that may be going on. They need to get this together. I'm glad that the two of them are divorced and they're not together anymore. Like, that makes my heart happy. Absolutely. Absolutely. Three sides of a story: his, hers, and the truth. What you saying, boo? I'm still not impressed when you got Ray this hard to show you got life together. It's a lie. Oh, you must be talking to somebody. It's probably a moot point, but Amber did the interview, and so we're getting new information, and so we're discussing it, right? I guess you're saying that as far as their relationship is concerned, but every time we watch Love After Lockup or any other reality TV show, they all want to get on TikTok and do interviews and stuff and just clear the records, right? And so I think that that's just basically kind of what we align with. Okay, you right about that. Let me delete this. Let me delete that. I agree. I agree. I agree. E. Mackey, 1973, said two things can be true. She's a liar, and he tried to use her. In my opinion, they are both manipulative. Agree. All right, y'all. Well, I got to get out of here. I'm late to my appointment. I thank you all so much for being here. Let me know downtown in the comments section what you all thought about the interview. Make sure you go over there and give Amber a view, a like, a click in a view, and just rah rah her and encourage her on getting the interview. Amber, I'm proud of you. You did a fantastic job. Fantastic job. Love y'all. Bye.